That's what can happen in a confined space when gas or vapor concentrations reach explosive levels. What you've just seen is a safety demonstration. The bottle represents a manhole where a concentration of gas, usually methane, has accumulated. It doesn't take much gas, and it doesn't take much to trigger an explosion. Here's the explosion again, slowed down. If you were working in this confined space, you would have 4 seconds to live.
Confined space means twice the risk because there are dangerous atmospheres and physical hazards. An OSHA report revealed 122 confined space accidents resulted in 173 fatalities. Even more frightening than that, more than half those killed were rescuers. This program, another in the safety series presented by the Underground Contractors Association of Chicago, the Chicago Area Laborers Training Fund, and the National Utility Contractors Association, is designed specifically for employees who must work in underground construction confined spaces. These 8 rules are important. They are literally rules to live by.
A confined space is any work area that has a limited means of entry or exit, is not designed for continuous worker occupancy, and may have an oxygen-deficient atmosphere or accumulations of toxic, explosive, or flammable gases. In our industry, typical confined space examples would include sewer pipes, manholes, utility vaults, lift stations, and trenches more than 4 feet deep. Make sure you can recognize any confined space and take the special precautions called for. You never enter any confined space unless you have permission. Your supervisor will be trained in confined space entry procedures and can provide the necessary training and equipment.
Okay, before we start work today, fellas, I want you to listen up. First of all, no worker enters a confined space without getting permission first. All right, don't forget that. If you don't have permission, you don't enter. I don't care what the reason, if you drop your hard hat into the hole or whatever. You have limited entrances and exits. And inside that confined space, there may be oxygen-deficient atmosphere or atmospheres that are explosive or toxic. The dangers you face are going to be different for every job. So you must understand the hazards you're going to face before you enter the confined space. Today you'll be working in a manhole, so you know it's going to be wet and slippery down there. So you're going to need your boots, your hard hat, gloves, lifeline, and harness. But before you get permission to enter the manhole, I'm going to test the air.
At this manhole job site, we're testing for 3 kinds of dangerous atmospheres: explosive gases, a lack of oxygen, and toxic conditions. Testing instruments must be calibrated and used properly. And since some gases are heavier than air, all areas of a confined space must be tested. Since many gases cannot be seen or smelled, never trust your senses to determine the safety of a confined space. Do not enter any confined space until a competent person has tested and given you permission. Remember, by its very definition, a confined space is difficult to get into and out of. So it's extremely important that potential hazards be eliminated before entering. Utilities flowing into this manhole must be locked out and tagged or blanked. Simply closing a valve is not acceptable. You must be sure no one will open that valve while you're working. A laborer working in a 10-foot deep trench forgot to lock out existing utilities. Someone inadvertently opened the valve upstream. The laborer was pinned by the valve he was working on and drowned when water filled the trench. It was a minor mistake, but it proved fatal in a confined space. Ventilation is the most effective way of assuring a safe atmosphere. Blowing in fresh air or sucking out bad air, as the situation dictates, assures a continuous turnover in confined spaces, diluting toxic and explosive gases and providing fresh air to breathe. Mechanical ventilation, however, is not necessary for every job. Many open-cut trenches are considered confined spaces, but natural ventilation may be sufficient to provide the necessary fresh air. On every confined space job, a standby person must be designated to remain outside the space and stay in contact with the workers inside. The standby also keeps track of every worker inside, so each is accounted for when leaving. In cases of emergency, the standby must know what to do and is authorized to order evacuation.
Whether you're inside or outside a confined space, you've got to know and follow all emergency rescue plan procedures. No one, and I repeat, no one, is to enter confined space for rescue without the proper training and equipment. And I'm going to tell you why. 60% of the workers who die in confined spaces were attempting to rescue others. Now let's check out this hoist. All right, guys, this is our safety latch that goes onto your harness. Just flip it, you screw it down to lock it in place, and that's it. It can't get away now. It can't slip off the harness.
Your supervisor will instruct you on equipment and proper emergency plan procedures for your job site. Particularly in confined space work, knowledge, training, and teamwork are essential.
Hey, I need some help over here!
Removing an injured or unconscious person from a confined space is both difficult and delicate. Steps for a safe rescue must be planned, and drills should be conducted frequently. Attempt an unplanned rescue, and it'll probably be your last. Always be aware that conditions within a confined space may change. Be alert for changes in the ventilation flow, an accumulation of dust or mist. Headache, difficulty in breathing, ringing in the ears, and euphoria are all symptoms of oxygen deficiency. Any of these conditions can indicate danger. Don't take chances. Get out. Before each workday, a confined space should be retested. Conditions can change overnight, and in higher risk confined spaces, it may be necessary to test more often. The real horrors of confined space work are the invisible hazards that you can't see, feel, or smell. Statistics prove that you are more likely to die in a confined space accident than suffer an injury. Your very lifeline in confined space work is recognizing, understanding, and performing according to these 8 rules of safety. Let's review them. Rule number 1. Be able to recognize a confined space. Rule 2. Obtain permission before entry. Rule 3. Understand the hazards before entry. Rule 4. Lock out upstream utilities. Rule 5. Ensure adequate ventilation. 6. A standby person must be available. Rule 7. Understand the rescue plan. And Rule 8. Be aware of changing conditions.